The West Tigers podcast is brought to you by the West Tigers Podcast Forum. Have your say on anything to do with the West Tigers. westtigerspodcast.com.au. It's the West Tigers podcast, and it's a midweek edition, and somehow, Gary, the world has spun around and we've ended up doing midweek podcasts, and we've not on the, well, I think you're on the Sunday night one, but everything's changed. Eddie is no longer available midweek, so I'd like to know what's going on there, and it's just not right, is it? I don't know how to do these midweek ones.
Yeah, I was asking Eddie on Sunday night whether it was a permanent change, because it's been quite a bit this season. I just think you guys are going to part-time podcasters. Like, you make me back up while you guys take every second podcast off.
Well, there's so many West Tigers podcasts around. I don't know why we don't just copy and paste. We just take a bit here and a bit there and just put it all together and not worry about it.
Just mix it all into one.
Exactly. Nick, how you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, Joel. Yourself?
Well, thank you. I've got one word, and we're just channeling our Sunday night edition. I've got one word here, and I thought it would be a good way to kick us off. And I didn't give you guys any warning about this, but there's something different about the West Tigers podcast, and it's not you, Nick. And it's
no, that is very different.
That is out there, but it's something that the one word will describe it, and that is off-field. And Gary, there's something different about the West Tigers, and the West Tigers podcast, and that is we're not talking about off-field stuff. We're putting a podcast together, and it's just about football. It's a weird thing.
Yeah, you asked me before we started what I wanted to talk about tonight, and I said football.
Yeah,
and for the past, I don't know, probably since you started this pod, Joel, with you and Eddie, I listened to those first couple episodes, and it was always about what was going on around the team. All last couple of years, that's all we're spoken about. It's really nice to finally just get to talk about football, and on Sunday night get to talk about winning football. But I don't care. Talking about any West Tigers football is much better than all the other carry-on that's been happening around our club. It's really nice to have. Hopefully it continues a settled club.
Nick, it's a lot less exhausting is what I find. Maybe at times maybe a little bit boring because there's not so much churn and burn as there used to be, but it's certainly nowhere near as exhausting.
Don't call it boring yet. We've had one win, so that hasn't become boring yet. But I saw something funny actually on social media today. Someone said that the West Tigers won't get the spoon because we've bought extra Panthers players this year, which is pretty funny. But it'd be nice to get used to winning, wouldn't it? Those Panthers fans must be pretty bored.
Yeah, but they better make the most of it because their run's coming to an end. That's my big prediction. They're not the same team that they were. The little meme, Nick, was they've bought enough players to avoid the spoon. Bought enough Penrith players to avoid the spoon. So let's not count our chickens before they hatch. There's something I know about this game of rugby league, and that is it can turn very quickly. You can have a couple of injuries and things can go wrong pretty quick. Ups and downs, Gary.
And I guess if you just keep buying Panthers players, we eventually become premiers and they become wooden spooners. Is that how it works?
Well, I guess eventually, if you got enough of them, yeah. Which does lead us into a good chat, and that's you put up the latest numbers in regards to our Player of the Year, the Jeff Chisholm Player of the Year, which is where the West Tigers podcast forum members vote on the best players from each West Tigers game. And Gary, I know it's only 2 rounds, so it's only a small sample size, but the top 5 players, all new recruits to the club. It goes to show, and I'm not discounting culture and I'm not discounting this, that and the other, but typically you're a good team if you've got the best players. I think we're a better team because we've got some better players that are playing at a higher standard, and I think that represents that.
Yeah, and I think even just the eye test shows that over the past couple of weeks. Terrell May's been simply outstanding, and he's leading that count by... He's got man of the match in that poll both weeks. I thought Buller was a little unlucky not to pick it up last weekend, but Terrell May's been outstanding. Jarrell Skelton's been outstanding. Jack Bird's been outstanding. Royce Hunt's been outstanding. These have been our best players. I think Luai's been good, and it's funny because he's probably... out of all those signings, he's the biggest name. He's the 1.2 million or whatever it is where we ended up paying for him. And I don't think he's been the most impressive new recruit. I think Terrell May far and away has been the most impressive. But all those other guys have put in wonderful performances. Skelton has been fantastic both weeks. I think he's probably been our second best player so far this season, and it just shows how important it is to get your recruitment right and to get the right type of players into your club, and yeah, hopefully that continues because I can see Terrell May, what he's done in the first 2 weeks, he's done easily. Like, it hasn't even looked difficult for him. Like, you wouldn't say that he's just gone out there and played to the limit of his ability and he's going to drop away. It's just nice, consistent football that, to me, looks like something he can do all year.
Doesn't Terrell look good? I heard on, it may have been a James Graham podcast, I can't remember, during the week, that he started off the bench last year for the Roosters and was playing up around 40 minutes a game, I think it was. And he's come across and really owned it, hasn't he? Like, he's playing, 60, 65 or so minutes for us. He's dominating, like you said, Gary. And it's only 2 games in, but his performance is dominating. When he's been brought off too, he hasn't looked out of shape. He hasn't looked out of breath. He looks like he could continue to play. So he is a real workhorse. And I know I mentioned during the off-season on one of the pods that he was running marathons with one of his brothers or his mates during the off-season. Like, he's obviously a freak. He obviously is very keen with his health and his physicality, Joel. Looks after himself, and he's presenting that on the football field. And he's clearly happy with Benji and being at the Tigers, because every time he's been asked, he speaks very glowingly about Benji and the opportunity that he's been given here. So I'm loving what I'm seeing. I mean, it's early days. It's only round 2, but the way he's playing, he wouldn't look out of whack in the Blues jersey, would he?
Those comments about last season, I think, are really apt. Like, I don't know what the Roosters were thinking, because he did have games coming off the bench last season, but he started a number of games for the Roosters as well. And any time he was playing over 50 minutes, they were his better games. Like, he played, there was one game he played last year where he played 80 minutes, ran for 220 metres or something, and I think it might have been a game where Roosters got an injury in their forward rotation, but he did 80 minutes easy in that game. So it's not like his form has all of a sudden jumped this season. I think he was showing this ability last year. That's why I was really keen to sign him when he became available. And I think he's probably lifting it to slightly a higher level, but I don't think he's doing a whole heap more. It probably stands out a little bit more in the West Tigers pack, because he's that dominant player in the pack now. He really is showing that he's that forward leader. And whereas at the Roosters, there was a bunch of other guys who probably had their names before him. So, yeah, I don't think he's playing that much better than he did last year. But, yeah, he's exactly what we've been waiting for a number of years.
I know Eddie said on the Sunday pod that, when we signed him, he instantly went onto the Roosters forum and had a look at, the top 15 or 20 comments, and all of them were negative about him leaving. Fans saying, "I can't believe we've let go of Terrell May. What's doing there?" And I had a quick look on X after the game on the weekend, and there were a lot of Roosters fans saying, Robinson should be sacked. And I wonder whether it's just, maybe it came down to a misunderstanding of Terrell May and his personality, and maybe a personality clash with Trent Robinson, because I can't think of any logical reason why he would not want to be retained based on what we've seen and what we did see, for the minutes that he did play for the Roosters last season.
The only thing I can really think of is, but he's as Western Suburbs as you get. He's a Mount Druitt boy. Possibly he just didn't mix with that culture of the Eastern Suburbs Glamour Club. That's the only thing I can really think of.
Yeah, well, it was going to be my point, is it's one of those rare occasions where we've actually upgraded. We've lost a player and upgraded in that position. But I'll throw it straight back to you guys, because Jack Bird's got a mention there in the Player of the Year, and he's totaled some points. So let's forget Jack for a moment, because he started off the bench in the 2 games. After Terrell May, I should say, who's been our best forward? Starting forward in the first 2 weeks.
I'm probably going to have to say Alex Twal, his performances playing at lock, and I really doubted him playing in that role, and I still don't overly like him playing in that role. But for me, he's probably our second best forward so far. I think Sam Fainu has shown some patches. I think he's done some good things, but I think we need to use him a little bit better than we have. I see him as that combination with Luai develops, having a really good season this year, but he's been a little bit patchy. And Pole defensively in round one was really poor. I thought he was a little bit better last week, but he needs to be doing better than what we've seen from him from the first two rounds.
Nick, you're in agreement. Twal would be next up after Terrell?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, Sam Faino, I love him, but he has been a bit...
He needs a haircut. He's got to go back to the old look.
He does need a haircut, or maybe he just needs to grow it out a bit more. It's just that in-between length, which doesn't quite work, but I'm sure he'll find his groove. And look, he's playing with a new halfback that plays very differently to what Aidan Caesar did. It's going to take him a little while to find his feet, I think, in the way that the backline's playing. And, geez, the way our backline looked, it was miles apart from the first game against the Knights to what we served up against Para. And I know it was hot, and I know Para weren't great, and they were backpedaling quite a bit in that game, and that probably gave us more opportunity to play off the front foot. But, I think Samuela will come into his own. I think it's just going to take him a little while to click, but I'm sure he'll get back to what we saw him do earlier last season.
There's a couple of things out of that Parramatta game. The first thing is it goes back to what Eddie and I used to talk about, in that the West Tigers so many times over the years have only been able to win when the other team hasn't turned up or has been abysmal, and that was definitely the Eels. That was a shocking performance from them. So we'll see how we go against tougher competition. Also, I think that game shows what I was saying last week, or I think it was last week, where my concern is still around the forwards, more so than the backs, even though we're only like touch wood an injury away from a problem in the back line, I think. But Gary, just staying with that feeling about second best forward and comparing that to Terrell May, I wonder if that's kind of the standard that the West Tigers forward pack has been the last couple of years, where Terrell is that step above, that we're able to see the difference, to see somebody who's so impactful and so professional and so consistent.
Yeah, look, and I was probably a little bit unfair because I think Hunt coming off the bench has been really strong as well. He isn't playing very big minutes, but the impact he's provided, and I think we're talking about starters, so that kind of ruled him out. So I didn't miss him, but I think he's been really, really great. I think he's really contributed, and really the first 20 minutes in both games, I think we've lacked a little bit of impact through the middle, and then Hunt's come on and he's provided that, and that's allowed the team to lift and take the game to another level. But I do think over the next 12 months, we do need to find another prop. I don't think there is quite enough there. Paulo even needs to go to another level and show what he showed in that, was it the second trial? I think he pushed out some really good meters. He was quite good in that game. We need to see that week in, week out from him, or we probably need another prop with a bit more impact starting. I think second row is crucial. I really believe that second row position, that right edge second row, we probably need to look at getting sorted for this season. I think that's going to cause issues the longer the season goes on. And in saying that, Seyfarth ran a beautiful line for that first try we scored against Parramatta, so credit there, but he's just not providing enough impact. I think I said on Sunday night, quite often he'll take that second hit up of a set, especially off those kickoffs. And even when Royce Hunt's provided the impact on that first play of the ball, Seyfarth hits the line and gets bent backwards and put onto his back, and it slows down the rest of the set. That's an issue for me at the moment in our squad, so we need to get that sorted out. I do still believe in the back line, we're in trouble in the centres still. I know Stafford was great on the weekend, but we've seen him be great before. He needs to do that consistently, and I haven't seen that yet. So I would be still looking at Taylor May and signing Taylor May and bringing him in to play in the centres as soon as we can, because I think that's still a weakness for us. But I do agree, we need some work done over the next 12 months in that forward pack.
The Talon May situation has gone cold. We haven't heard anything at all about
Very
that.
cold.
Very, very cold. But I mean, that's kind of Richo's way as well. We'll know about it when it happens. But maybe his headspace is just not right to play. This year maybe he'll sit out the year or something like that. Do you remember back in, I think it was 1990, Nick, in Parramatta Stadium, Lee Odenryan and Martin Nafire had a race from goal line to goal line? I think we need to do that with the West Tigers. I want to see a field of Alex Lobb, Alex Twal, Adam Dewey, and Royce Hunt.
After watching the three Alexes,
after watching, we could put all three Alexes in. But after watching Royce Hunt the other day with that great chase, I don't think he'd be. I think he'd hold himself in pretty good stead, despite giving away a 20 or 15 kilo weight disadvantage.
I'll back him over 50. He was pretty quick out of the blocks too. Yeah. Big Royce. He certainly gave him a shake. There were a couple of nasty videos that the Tigers players were sharing over Instagram stories after that game. Not picking on him, but comparing him to a couple of cartoon characters, very large ones, running very quickly. But they're very fitting. He would be scary, wouldn't he? If he was chasing in the dark, I would be frightened.
100%. You just need to find a really narrow passageway to get through, because that'd block him. Contract news, not a lot of anything too secure or cement to talk about, but apparently a big offer coming in for Galvin from the West Tigers. And the newspaper journalists have put two and two together and realised that Talon De Silva is also off contract and can negotiate from November. They are very, very good friends. Could be a very good package deal. But, Gary, I think that's going to test whether this whole Galvin thing is about money or if it's more than that, because by the sound of it, our offer is going to be extraordinarily generous.
Yeah, from everything that I've seen reported in the last couple of days, it's going to be $1 million plus contract. I don't know how many years, but that's big money for a teenager. And Brent Reid reported over the weekend that he'd be the highest paid teenager in the game. So I think once you hit that $1 million mark, that's a contract that I'd be expecting him to sign. I'd be expecting him to stay. And if he then decides to go to November to see what else is available, then I think that really raises big concerns about whether he's looking to stay at the club. I'm sure Richo has it under control and they're getting the finances sorted out, and that offer will come soon. But this can't be solved and sorted out soon enough. The speculation around it has the potential to be really damaging to our season. And I honestly, with Api Coruscant being off contract at the end of 2026 as well, I think getting Talon De Silva signed up and locked in moving forward is really important as well. We've spent the last couple of years pretty much saying that once Api finishes up, once he retires, that Talon will be ready to take over. Now, how terrible of a situation would it be as we get to that point where Api retires and then Talon is signed elsewhere? So both those contracts are really important, and I think have to be the priority for the club over the next couple of months to get both of those sorted out. I think they're crucial to our long-term success.
Nick, do you think it would be a better way of going with Galvin would be to maybe not offer him something like the Brown deal, which was 10 years, but offer him something lucrative, but maybe because he's already here 25, 26, but do another couple of years after that at a good rate and bump up the next 2 years. Give us 3 or 4 years, give him 3 or 4 years to make sure that the club's going in the right direction. It's sort of having a bet each way rather than trying to get him to sign 8, 9, 10 years, as much as we'd all like to see him stay that way, that long.
The issue with that is if we offer him a lesser term, slightly lesser money offer or contract before November 1, and I really do think that is Isaac Moses is Galvin's manager. I think Moses is putting his foot down and saying, no, we're going to wait because I think he wants to see how big that bucket is for his client. And I have a feeling we would get blown out of the water if we don't put something extremely lucrative in front of him. I'm not sure how much Lockie's willing to put his hand up and say, if Richardson comes out and says to Lockie, look, we're going to give you $1 million and we're going to give you a 5-year contract, I'm not sure if Lockie would put his hand up to his manager and say, I'm going to take it, or if he throws it over to Isaac Moses and says, what do you think? Because it'd be very easy for Moses then to sit back and say, let's wait for November 1, because I think he can get 1.2 or more from the Roosters or from whoever. I would be leaning towards trying to lock him up for as long as possible and giving him as much as realistically plausible. Offering him 1.2, 1.3, I think is too much. But if we could get him, and it sounds like we're going to have to give him $1 million, but if we could give him $1 million with a good 5-year contract, I don't want 4 years of player options, but unfortunately that's the way a lot of contracts are going these days, isn't it? But I think you've got to give him something pretty juicy to want to stay. Same with Talon. Obviously not that type of money, but you've really got to sell the future of the West Tigers to Talon. Say, look, you and Lockie, it's up to you guys. We're putting all our faith in you guys to take the next generation through and get the Tigers into a top 4 situation every season.
For me, that Dylan Brown contract at Newcastle really muddies the waters. That sets a precedent and a price range for an NRL half. Because I don't like Dylan Brown hasn't done anything to be considered an elite NRL player. He's got a little bit of potential, but I think he's a slightly above average NRL half. Lockie's got the potential to be elite. And the fact that he has a 10-year contract worth $1.3 million, that means every other half, Lockie Gavin included, are looking at that and thinking, well, if Dylan Brown, who's an above average half, is worth $1.3 million, I'm worth more than that. And I think that muddies the waters a little bit. I think that contract hurts the West Tigers' negotiation position a little bit because it's just so overs, but it sets a precedent. Brad Fittler was an extremely big NRL 5'8", who was able to play at lock when he needed to, but spent most of his career playing in the 6. And I'm not comparing him to Brad Fittler, but there's no reason why a bigger half can't exist in the NRL, especially in the days now where forwards and players are getting bigger and bigger. So I don't necessarily think his size is going to really limit him. I think he'll make it as a 6 in the NRL, but signing him to a 10-year contract, you are gambling on that. You're gambling on the fact that you think he'll make an NRL 6, when it is quite possible he ends up his best position being a 13.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I absolutely agree with what you're saying, Gary. It's a lot of money for somebody who's maybe not end up a spine player, but then you look at the importance of Isaiah Yeo to the Panthers, 100%. And you'd be paying him $1 million for the contribution that he gives to that team. Yeah,
I'd almost pay him $1 million to come to the Tigers and play halfback. He's that important to the Panthers and that skillful, fantastic footballer, and is as important to that Panthers team as anyone else in the side. He's as important to the Panthers as Nathan Cleary is.
100%, yeah. We play the Dolphins this Saturday at 5:30. Heath Mason's on the bench. He wasn't on the bench last week. Are we reading too much into that? Are there question marks? We saw the moon boot for Buller. To me, it looks sort of 50-50. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a change. Nick, I know that none of us know what's going on and where, what Buller's ankle's doing and this, that, and the other, but it would be a big blow for the team. And that's not to take anything away from Mason, but the way that Buller played last week, he was really, really good. It would be a shame if he doesn't play.
It would be, and I know that we talked about it on Sunday, and I've heard on other pods and other TV shows too that Buller potentially had close to his best ever NRL game in total last week, and it was his first game back after pretty significant surgery. So it did show how important he is to our team. I love the way he ball plays and he's running. He's deceptively quick because he's so tall and lanky, and I mentioned that on Sunday too, but And he's so good under the high ball, especially when you compare him to someone like Heath Mason, who does give Gary the jitters. And Gary's mentioned that before. There's a lot of stuff I do like about Heath's game, but Buller is that class above, in my opinion. But yeah, you're right. The way that he was hobbling around before he slammed his knee into the ground late in that game with about 3 or 4 minutes to go. And I was thinking he was looking a little ginger. I wouldn't be surprised if they put him on ice for a week. If a week is going to be all it's going to take to get him back to 100% and no niggles, then it might be worth doing that. I do think it would impact the way that we play in our attack, which would be disappointing. But yeah, fingers crossed. I hope he's fine. I hope it was all precaution. I hope he's good to go.
I think he's crucial for this weekend. The shape that he provided to our attack was really important last weekend. And if you watch the Dolphins play last week, the Knights just stripped them time and time again just by throwing simple shape at them. You have a look how we played against the Knights. We didn't really have any shape, and my opinion is Buller coming back and the way he slides around the back, that's what allowed us to play with the shape that we played against Parramatta. If he's not there and we lose that shape, the game becomes a lot tougher. Most of Newcastle's tries last Thursday or Friday night, I can't remember what night. Thursday night, were on the edges, were from them running shape and block plays at the outside backs of the Dolphins, and they just couldn't handle it. They weren't even greatly executed shape plays. So I think we have a real shot on, especially once we get in the red zone against the Dolphins on Saturday. But that shape that we had on the weekend needs to be better than what we saw against Parramatta. It needs to be a lot more precise in what we're doing. But that's how we beat them on Saturdays, is throwing shape at them in the red zone, because they can't handle it at all.
But that's not to say that they're not going to be better this week, because that's something that we've seen early on in this competition. Is that, teams that look terrible in round one and they won in round two. Look at the Roosters, for example. You just don't sort of know what you're going to get, especially back up there.
I do know Parramatta is going to be bad this weekend again.
Yeah, that looks. You probably put a bet on that. For the Dolphins, there's two players that always seem to have good games against us, Nick.
Hammer.
Well, yeah, him, of course. But two guys that aren't stars that tend to play like superstars. One of them is actually a former West Tiger, Jeremy Marshall-King. Remember last year how well he played against us?
Yeah,
and
absolutely carved us apart, straight up the middle.
And we always seem to have trouble with Nikorima as well. So you can't take him lightly, I think is my message, Nick. You kind of, every week, you're running into an NRL team, and even if Gary is excluding Parramatta, but even if they played poorly last week, I think this is going to be a tough game.
Yeah, I've looked at the team list, and I'm always worried whoever we come up against. It doesn't matter who our opposition is, but that's a lot of scar tissue there over the last 10, 12, 13 years. So I am nervous. I do think we're a bit tighter in the middle this year from what I've seen already, which is where I think we might be able to contain the halves a little bit better than perhaps what we have in the past. So hopefully we won't let them create too much opportunity. And the good thing too, from what we've seen the last 2 weeks, is our defence.
Yeah,
it's been incredible. I know that we've played some rubbish football. The first 20, 30 minutes of that game against the Eels was horrible. I think Cooper Cronk at one point during the commentary last weekend just said, "This is bad." And that was after really poor and laborious backline movement that we threw, and the ball just went to ground on the first tackle. It was horrible to see. And that was just before all the points started flooding out of nowhere. But I think we're better placed this season, or this week anyway, to hopefully beat the Dolphins. I do think that we probably look better on paper, but of course football's not played on paper. It all depends on how we click on the day.
For me, Nick, that 20 minutes you're talking about, it's going to be crucial. That opening 20 minutes is going to be crucial for the West Tigers all season. I don't think we're going to come out in that first 20 minutes and blow sides away. I can't actually see that happening at all this year. I think that opening 20 minutes is going to be a time where we need to stay in the game. We need to defend well. We need to keep pushing them back, because I don't think we have the impact in our starting forward pack to really cause some damage and play really good attacking football in that opening 20 minutes. For me, it's not until that first interchange where we get Hunt and Jack Bird come on. Last weekend, they both came on at the same time. And that's when we get the go forward to actually be able to really cause an issue for the opposition defences. So I think that opening 20 minutes all season is going to be a time period where we need to hang in the game a little bit and defend really well in that 20 minutes. And I expect it to be the same against the Dolphins on Saturday. We have to stay in that grind in that opening 20 minutes.
Well, I think that might be Benji's blueprint. And I know that he mentioned it. Did he mention it in a press conference after the game last week where he said, you win the game in the first half and you score the points in the second half?
Win the game early, score the points in the second.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that's definitely what we saw last week. I know it was messy again, but let's see how we go around 3. If we can keep them very close to 0 at halftime, I think we're probably seeing a pattern, which I like. And I was just having a look at the table quickly before this pod. Actually, the for and against is looking pretty good. Like it's only early, but our percentages are looking good, and I think we've conceded the least amount of points across 2 rounds.
Yeah, we've got the best defensive record in the comp.
Very impressive for a 3-peat Spooner team.
Exactly. Just on the starts, I thought we started well against the Knights and got progressively worse as the game went on. And against Parramatta, it was the opposite. We started poorly and got progressively better as the game went on. So I think there's a bit of a flip over in those 2 games. So that means I don't know what the hell we're going to get on Saturday night, Gary.
One thing to keep an eye on that's a little bit of an indicator for me, and Steve raises it all the time, it's where you take your kicks from. So if you watch us closely in both those games, in that opening 20 minutes, we're kicking from around the 40-metre mark outside of the field. If you watch Parramatta last weekend, they were making it over halfway. They're on top in that situation. They're on top in the game in that situation. And we just don't have that go forward. And I think Terrell gets better as the game goes on. I think early in the game, he lacks that little bit of impact early in the game to kind of drive us down the field and get us all the way down the field. So if you watch the game on Saturday, my prediction is in that opening 20 minutes, we'll be kicking from inside our 40 a lot of the time. But as the game goes on, after Hunt and Bird come on, after May's starting to play against other forwards who are tiring a little bit more than he is because he's so fit, he starts to push out better meters, and Hunt gives that impact, and you'll see our sets start to finish around that 40-metre line. I think that's kind of how most of our games are going to play out this season. And you're right, Nick, about Benji saying win the game early, score the points late. It's a great strategy, but it's also a necessity with kind of the makeup of our team at the moment. I think we can win games like that, but we've got to be really strong defensively, especially in that first 20 minutes. We can't let a side score 2 or 3 tries in that 20-minute period because I don't think we have the attack in that period of the game or the field position in that time of the game to kind of compete with that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds this weekend and over the season.
The thing that stands out to me from the Eels game is that, to me, the feeling was that the West Tigers are a side that will get better as the year, as they played together
100%.
more. It seemed to be a team that looked like it was going to get better. Whereas when I watched the Dolphins last week, I didn't see that. I kind of thought it just didn't look like it was ever going to come together. So they were really disjointed. So that's an interesting comparison. The bookies, though, they've got the Dolphins as the slight favourites, 50-50 head-to-head. We beat them in 2023, I think, by that Appy Coruscant goal. Remember that? That was fantastic.
Parramatta, Bank West on the sideline.
Yeah, I can't really remember the game last year, other than I remember it being disappointing. When Richo, we'll get to the Yachties quiz in a moment, but when Richo took over at West Tigers, he recalled, it might have been in the James Graham podcast that he did, he said, when I took over at South, we were terrible. And then we were bad, and then we were ordinary, and then we were good, and then we were great. So there seems to be like 5 levels. And I agree with him. And I think we were terrible. And if you looked at the first 20 minutes of last week, we were bad. But then I thought we were nudging up towards ordinary, which is okay because we're only aiming for 7th or 8th spot. So you only have to be ordinary, don't you? Where do you guys think we're at? And I know it's really early. It's really, really early in the piece. A couple of trials, a couple of games, and we'll probably talk about this, after maybe 10 rounds. But as compared to the last couple of years, how do you think we're tracking, Nick?
We're definitely tracking on an upward trajectory compared to the last couple of years. I think at this stage last year, I know I definitely didn't have much hope at all for what we're going to do for the season. There's a lot more to like already. So, the recruitment over the off-season was great. The players that we've replaced, we've put in upgrades across those key pivotal positions. I much prefer Luai, even though he hasn't really jumped out of his skin yet and shown what he can do as a playmaker. I do think he looks like he's going to offer a little bit more than what Caesar did last season. And all the other players are going to fall in off the back of that too. We said that a few weeks ago. I think Buller's going to go to a new level this year. And it was so easy to see, wasn't it? Only in round 2, his first game back, that he benefited from some quicker halves that were playing, better lines and putting us in better positions across the field. We all of a sudden we went from that flat attack that we had against Newcastle to a lot of depth and shape, which we didn't think was possible. Or I didn't think was going to be possible. But I can only see us going upwards, Joel. I am excited to see where we go. I'm still hesitant. I want to get through the first 6 and 8 weeks of the competition and see where we sit. I really hope we're 50-50 after a couple of months. That'd be amazing because that's only going to give us so much confidence as we move past the origin period and then in towards, closer towards semi-final period.
Which puts us in that sort of middle field where, that's a good sign of progress and it's something to build on. What I need to see, Gary, is I need to see us win a game against good competition that's in the match and we graft out a win. We control the match and we win it like a professional football team does. If you watch teams like Cronulla and Melbourne, that's the way that they win their games.
Yeah, win a game in that final 20 minutes, but with good, smart football.
Yeah.
Really good decisions from our halves. Luai controlling the team. I think that's when we'll start to get a little bit more confidence. Once you start to blow a side away, especially in the heat like we did Parramatta on the weekend, things are fairly easy. I do want to see us in a tough game and
an arm wrestle.
And not an arm wrestle against a team that's playing poorly and then matching us playing poorly. I want to see an arm wrestle of 2 high quality football teams, us being one of them, really going at each other. And you have to go back so far to remember that as a West Tigers fan. So that's what I want to see. That's when I'll get a bit more confidence. But talking about where I think we are, I know Eddie had us as wooden spooners about 20 minutes into that Parramatta game.
Yeah. Moving to Perth.
And moving to Perth and, maybe Papua New Guinea, who knows.
Yeah.
But I think his opinion raised during the game, and that's kind of where I sit at the moment. We're a building football team. I do agree with that. We were terrible the last couple of years. I think we're bad in round 1, despite it being a close game. I think we're better last week. But to really be that ordinary team, which if you're thinking around the bottom of the 8, you need to be playing decent football week in, week out. And this side hasn't shown that yet. One game isn't enough to convince me that we've moved on from being one of those lower level teams. Despite how good it was, we need to see really strong performances week after week. And I think Nick's right. About 6 to 8 weeks into this competition, we should have a better idea of what sort of team we have. But when you go back to this time last year, it was about 6 weeks into the competition before we got our first win. So round 2, we've got a win. Let's see if we can get another couple before we get to the same point we did when we got our first win last year. That'd be nice.
That would be. Yeah. Okay, let's get into Yachty's trivia. Thank you, Yachty. A little bit of a Dolphins feel. Are we ready, boys?
Yep.
Yep.
Who scored our first ever try against the Dolphins? It was in round 25, 2023. Who scored the first try in that game? I'll give you 4 different options. Fanua Pole, Asu Kapoa, Alex Seyfarth, or Jake Simpkin?
I'm going to go with Kapoa.
Kapoa for Gary. Who'd you say, Nick?
I'll be different. I'll say Jake Simpkin.
Well, you'd both be wrong. It was Fanua Pole, scored in the 13th minute. The game at Combank Stadium. We won it, 24-23 was the final score with that Appy conversion. True or false? The last West Tigers player to score a hat-trick prior to Sunia Turuva's was before the COVID-19 plagued 2020 NRL season. So has somebody scored a hat-trick since 2020?
I'm going to say it's true, and no, we haven't.
So Nick is saying false.
No. Yeah, I
Nick doesn't even get the question.
Well, Nick picks up the point. Then it was in 2020, David Nofaluma scored 3 tries, 34-32 win over Manly at Brookvale. David Nofaluma, there's a blast from the past.
Miss you, Noffa. Hope you're well, mate.
So far, 299 players have represented the West Tigers. This is a real yachty one, this one. How many of those 299 people, how many of them have had surnames that start with a vowel? A-E-I-O-U.
Utai Kamanu.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Ali Amalo.
Matt Utai.
Yeah, Matt Utai. I had Josh Aloye.
Yep.
Players that start with an E.
I know he said Elijah Taylor, but it's his first name.
Yeah.
So that doesn't work.
Eisenhuth.
Elford.
Yep.
Elford. Eisenhuth. Yeah. He's going to give us the list next
Was he
week.
just asking for a number?
Yeah, just asking for a number.
I'm going to say 15.
15, Nick?
I'll say 16.
You're closer. So Nick is leaning 2-1. No, Nick is
you,
leaning
Gary.
2-0.
I've got you covered, Gary.
Did you name any of the players, though? I don't think you did.
So Alamalo. Thank you very much.
So you got one.
Correct.
No bonus
That's all
points.
that's all that was required.
Apart from the Dolphins, which 2 Sydney clubs have we played at Redcliffe? They were played during the COVID-19 relocation to Queensland. One game was one of the most disappointing afternoons of football ever. There was one highlight, and it was from somebody that you just mentioned a few moments ago, Gary. He chased down a player that had made a break.
I'm going to say the Bulldogs.
Yeah, the Bulldogs. So that was Yuto Stefano.
Utoi Kamanu.
Utoi
Kamanu.
Yeah, chasing down one of the Bulldogs' wingers and making a cover tackle. That was sort of the highlight of that game.
It doesn't matter if you mess up his name now, Joel.
Exactly.
We don't care about him anymore.
Stefano. We lost that game 38-0. It was the last game of the season. That was so disappointing that afternoon.
And we played the Panthers there.
We did, and we lost that one as well, 30 points to 16. So we haven't won at Redcliffe. So does that give you 2 points? 2-2.
That gives me 2 points.
Okay, so the tiebreaker is a who am I?
Joel Helms.
That's true.
Really? What a dad joke.
Tony Barber.
Seriously.
Yeah. Was born in Parramatta in 1991. So what does that make him? 30, 34?
Oh, yeah.
Won a car on the footy show via League of Their Own when I was 9 years old. I didn't know that. Debuted with the Western Sydney team and spent 3 seasons there. He made 15 appearances for this other Western Sydney team. Joined West Tigers in a coach's last full season. So his first season was the coach's last full season with us. And he played 19 games. He scored 7 tries and kicked 3 goals in this year. He left the following season to play for a club not located in a state. So, obviously that's Canberra.
Yeah. Or New Zealand.
True.
At Canberra.
It was Canberra anyway, yeah. Finished off my career playing for 3 English clubs in the Super League. represented Portugal despite having no Portuguese ancestry. Must just like Portuguese chicken, maybe. That's what gets you in. Currently playing as a marquee signing somewhere in New South Wales.
Marco Halloran.
Marco Halloran? No. Marco Halloran would be at least 10 years older, Gary.
I don't know.
Nick, it doesn't ring a bell.
No idea. No.
I'll give you a couple of clues that I can think of off the top of my head. Pretty much always started off the bench and was an impact player off the bench. Also a real utility. You could put him at hooker, halfback, 5'8", fullback, wing. He was a real fan favourite there in the year that he had with us. People were, really excited and really disappointed when he left.
Blake Austin.
And he is one of the people that has a surname that starts with a vowel. Blake Austin. So Gary's the winner, 3-2.
I gave it to you, Gary. I felt bad for you, mate. Well done.
Yeah, because I never win the quiz.
He played with Penrith between 2011 and 2013. It was Mick Potter's last season, 2014, when he was with the West Tigers.
Yeah.
Played for Canberra 2015 to 2018. Warrington, Leeds and Castleford in the Super League. Invited to play for Portugal in 2009 by his father's friend, with Austin saying he hated turning down invitations and would find it an interesting experience. And he is now with the Berkeley Vale Panthers as both a player and junior development mentor.
It's funny how many players like that as a fan base we get so excited about, and we absolutely rubbish the club when they let them go, and they go somewhere else. And like Jackson Hastings is another one, and they just go nowhere. But then I guess we have so many that go and then play a lot better. But yeah, there's a lot that the fan base gets really excited about that do nothing after they leave.
Yeah, it's true. How is John Bateman?
I don't know if he's heard Eddie's rant yet, but I'm sure Eddie's hoping he's heard it.
Yeah.
He's been quiet on social media. I don't think he's liked any West Tigers posts in the last few days.
Yeah. Well, Eddie's chopped him down a few spots, I think, yeah. All right, boys. Quick prediction for the game against the Dolphins?
I think it's going to be probably a tight one. I don't think we're going to blow them away. Hopefully we'll get the 2 points. Am I confident? Not really, but I just hope we put in another good performance, good defensive performance, and let's see what we can build on top of that.
No, this is a game we should win. I think we control them through, hold the middle, and then get ourselves up the field and spread it wide with good shape. They're very vulnerable. I expect us to win this one. I think we'll win it quite easily. I'm thinking 24-12.
24-12. It's a game that the West Tigers would traditionally lose. So
it is, and like it is a tough backup for the West Tigers. Like 37-degree heat on Sunday, having to travel up to Brisbane. It's not an easy week, but these are the type of games that you have to win if you want to be that top 8 side. The Dolphins is a side that's going to be outside that top 8. We need to beat them this weekend, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. And my little Joel's coaching tip for the week: bomb to Junior Tupu. He'll eventually drop one. So keep bombing to Junior. Not one of my favourite players. I think we'll win. I know that's terrible thing to, as soon as you say it, you think, oh God, we've cursed us, but I'm pretty confident. I'm about the same, Gary, maybe 24-12, something like that. I can't see, touch wood, I can't see the Dolphins, based on that performance last week, scoring too many points. They seemed really, really clunky, but hey, who knows what might happen on the night. Thank you, guys. I don't know who'll be here Sunday night. Could be me. We might reverse things back around, but we'll find out. So,
isn't it Nick's turn to host on Sunday night?
Nick is getting closer to his hosting debut, yeah.
I'm unavailable on Sunday. Thanks anyway.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, boys.
Thanks, fellas.